One of the things that I find fascinating is how tribal human beings can be. Now, as someone who comes from one of the most complex societies in the world, I can attest to how destructive tribalism can be. For instance, Nigerians tend to vote along ethnic and religious lines, and that has led to so many crises in the country. Now interestingly, the concept of tribalism is increasingly becoming popular in American political discourse today to illustrate how divisive the left and the right are becoming. You know, now it would be an oversimplification to assume that the people that exhibit tribal tendencies are less intelligent or they are irrational. The point is we descended from tribal ancestors, and it only makes sense if we exhibit tribalism every once in a while. Now perhaps the two biggest domains where human beings exhibit tribalism are politics and religion. And interestingly, I just finished reading Jonathan Haidt's The Righteous Mind: Why Good People Are Divided by Politics and Religion. Now, this book tries to explain morality from various perspectives. Now, the point is, morality is the basis for human beings disagreeing. It is the basis for us belonging to different groups, different tribes, And so, Jonathan Haidt borrows from evolutionary psychology, it borrows from social psychology, from philosophy, from history, to explain how humans evolved to be tribal and to be moral. Now perhaps my biggest takeaway from this book is the parts where he explains human groupishness. Why is it the case that human beings are groupish? Why is it the case that we are social? And he uses the analogy of chimpanzees and bees to illustrate that. So he argues that 90% of the time human beings are like chimpanzees, and 10% of the time we are like bees. If you study chimpanzees, you will notice that chimpanzees organize themselves in groups. However, chimpanzees are not as altruistic. Chimpanzees are actually very selfish. Even though they belong to groups, they are ultimately selfish. And 90% of the time, human beings are like that. Even though we belong to groups, we are ultimately selfish creatures. However, 10% of the time, we are like bees. If you think of the beehive, you will see how they are ultra social. Bees in a beehive are extremely altruistic. The individual is subsumed by the hive. The individual is subsumed by the group. And Jonathan Haidt argues that 10% of the time, in real moments, human beings can be like bees in the sense that the individual is completely subsumed by the collective. So a very good example would be in moments of warfare. Human beings or soldiers can get along to the point that it is not about the individuals. It's about the fact that they have to defeat an enemy, and the idea of individualism completely dies in those moments. Perhaps a very good example I could give would be during the NSAS protest in 2020. I saw how young people came out and protested for something they felt was bigger than themselves. It wasn't about individuals. People left their jobs. People left the comfort of their house and participated and partook in something they felt wasn't about them. It was about the collective. It was about trying to change, the system. So in rare moments like that, human beings can be ultra altruistic. Human beings can be ultra social. So again, 90% of the time, we are like chimpanzees in the sense that we are selfish and we are groupish. And 10% of the time, we are like bees in the sense that we are ultra social and we are hivish. Now, another takeaway from the book is his explanation of religion. Now, oftentimes when scholars talk about religion, they mock it in a way. But however, Jonathan Haidt argues that we evolved to be religious because religion does a very good job at making human beings cohere. Religion does a good job at bringing people around, a moral code, bringing people around a framework. It is perhaps not smart or not wise to look down on religion in that sense. Now, we can debate all day long whether religion is, whether God is real or not. We can debate that all day long. However, functionally speaking, religion served an evolutionary purpose in the trajectory of the human species. And so we should be careful of not throwing the baby out with the bathwater when we critique religion. Ultimately, I enjoyed reading this book. It is true that we are tribal creatures. It is true that we are forever going to be divided along political lines, along religious lines. However, an understanding of human morality, an understanding of how we evolved to be the way we are, could help us overcome some of these tribal divisions we have, could perhaps allow us to understand ourselves better. By understanding ourselves better, it is going to help us put things in a perspective, and we can stop having all these meaningless arguments and fights and we tend to have. Thank you very much. I'll see you guys in the next one.